Hello, friends, and welcome to the first edition of the Coming In for a Landing podcast. We will talk all things Sixers every week. My name is Paul Hudrick, and I will be your host. I do not have a permanent co-host as we speak. Maybe something's in the works, wink, wink. But I do have a very special guest co-host for this inaugural edition. A former colleague of mine, Sixers fans, you know him. Some of you might love him. I don't know. We'll see. But he's obviously doing a fantastic job now for the Ringer, and that's Mr. John Gonzalez. John, it is very good to see you, bud.
Wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be on the maiden voyage of the podcast. Very exciting stuff.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, this was supposed to go up tonight, or last night, I should say, Thursday night, but whoops, hit a little audio snag. So fun story. I have to explain it because this is just so funny. So my girlfriend is like a great person, carries the love of my life, but she is not the person you go to when you need like comforting of any kind or consoling because I did it. And obviously I'm angry. I'm cursing up a storm. Audio's all thrown off. She comes up, what's going on? And she's like, let me just listen to it. Maybe it's not that bad. I'm like, no, you're going to laugh. It's going to make me more angry. She's like, no, just let me listen. She listens. She laughs, makes me more angry. She tells me I sound like Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs.
Oh,
I and here we are, and I sound a lot better today. I think. I hope.
well, I think you're doing great, Clarice. This is wonderful.
But first of all, hi, hello. How are you? How are things?
Things continue, man. We just got done with the draft, and now free agency is going to barrel through, and basketball start. Apparently, the Toronto Raptors are moving to Florida. They're going to be the Tampa Raptors.
Tampa Raptors.
So basketball, as we like to say, never stops.
No, it doesn't. We got free agency starting in just a few hours from the time that we were recording this. Some interesting ins and outs. The whole thing with the Milwaukee Bucks and the Bogey Bogdanovich situation, where now we don't really know what's going to happen there. It looks like he will not be joining the Milwaukee Bucks, so he's still maybe up for grabs. Some interesting things for the Sixers. A couple minor moves. They waive Mario Shayok and Norvel Pell. Daryl Morey just making more space for himself and giving himself more flexibility. But we haven't talked at all. Well, we talked yesterday, but that doesn't count, I guess. We haven't talked about Daryl Morey, Doc Rivers, everything that's going on in the Sixers offseason. As you're seeing all of this unfold, what are your thoughts on, they move on from Brett Brown, they get Doc Rivers basically 2 days later. Daryl Morey leaves the Rockets within a week. He's now above Elton Brand as a Sixers team president. You're seeing all this. What are you thinking?
Well, first, one day you'll have to release the Buffalo Bill aborted pod audio for at least for like Smithsonian Records or like the Library of Congress or something. I think.
And it was good. I thought we actually.
We killed it.
This is all going to sound.
Going to be way worse.
Exactly.
I mean, I feel terrible for people who have to listen to this one. The other one was good. I was really excited. I think that I was, as you know, as a lot of people know, anybody who's familiar with my work or has listened to me at the Ringer knows that I'm a big Brett Brown guy. I think that some people, there was some criticism that was right, but I've always maintained that there's like a handful of coaches at the very top of the league, and then there's a handful of coaches at the very bottom of the league, and pretty much everybody else falls into the middle, sort of interchangeable. And I always thought that Brett was closer to the top of the league and being interchangeable in the bottom for sure. Not to mention that he's just a great dude, but I think that it had run its course. It was time to move on. And I just didn't know, there was a lot of rumors and a lot of talk about Ty Lue being the guy. I've been around Ty Lue. I spent a lot of time in Cleveland for the Ringer when LeBron was there. And Ty Lue's great. But I think Doc is a better fit for this city. But the bigger question was, what was going to happen with that front office? And for a while, it looked like they were going to make any moves at all. And then boom, all of a sudden, Daryl Morey becomes available and they sign him and they bring him into work above Elton, but in tandem. And I think it's just a fantastic move by Sixers ownership. And I've been as critical of Sixers ownership as anybody. I think that they've deserved the blows that they've taken from the media and from the fans, but this is much to their credit.
Yeah, it's one of those things too where I don't want to discredit them because, like you said, they had to do it. They had to convince Doc Rivers this is the right place for him. He said he was ready to take a break, so they definitely had to talk him into that. Even Daryl Morey sounded like, I never really bought the idea that he was going to be like, yeah, I'm going to do something else other than basketball because I just think he's one of those dudes who just loves a challenge. And I didn't see him stepping away from the game entirely. But again, they had to recruit him. They had to convince him that this is the right spot. But also at the same time, man, sometimes it is truly better to be lucky than good. And to have those two caliber guys with the cachet they have kind of fall into their laps, like after you could, they made their own luck the last few years with some of the moves they've made, but what a wonderful reversal of fortunes to have these two guys kind of fall into their lap. We're going to talk the draft. We're going to talk free agency. Spoiler alert, one of us knows the draft stuff a little bit more than the other. You guys can figure out which as we go along here. Just
it's going to be super hard to figure out when you're explaining to me who they took. Go ahead.
But we talk about Daryl Morey. The first big move he makes, Al Horford on draft night. Yeah. What he does in that deal and getting off that contract that we all can agree. Anyone who watches basketball, who watched the Sixers last year, not a good fit. Did not work. You knew that contract had to be removed.
I think even in her heart of hearts, Anna Horford knows that's not a good contract. And by the way, everybody leave the Horfords alone. It didn't work out, but that doesn't mean that they're nice people. Al's like one of the nicest guys in the league. Get off of social media and stop giving them heat. All right. That's
and listen, for everything, and that's a credit to Al Horford, man. I was around him a lot, obviously, this past season. The guy took everything in stride. Like, he never complained. He went to the bench, didn't complain, just put his head down, did his job. I still think he's got something. Like, Sam Presti's going to turn this dude into a first-round pick next offseason. Like, because there's still something in the tank there.
Sam Presti's a witch, and he's managed to do that with a lot of people that he shouldn't have been able to do. But just to the Al Horford point, he might have something left. I think he might. It might have been a bad fit here. But also, he's just the consummate professional. And this is what I'm talking about when, like, two things can be true, right? It can be true that it didn't work out for him in Philadelphia, and that he is also the consummate professional and a good dude. And then, like, you can say, hey, it didn't work out, but we still wish you well, rather than being like Cro-Magnons. I've always thought of Elton and Al Horford as like very, very similar, because when Elton played, he had that same ethos. Like, Elton would sit down with you and tell you, oh, I had a terrible game, but he'd treat you and interact with you like a human. He still does that now. I mean, like, when he'll tell you, look, maybe some of those signings didn't work out, or maybe we should have gone a different way, or like, he's honest about it and a professional, but that doesn't mean that we have to, run them into the ground while also criticizing them. I think there's a fair way to do it, but I wish Al Horford well, and it's good that he's gone. Daryl Morey did a good thing with that.
Yes. And just to off your Elton Brand point, I think we have to give him a little more credit for kind of swallowing his ego a little bit and saying, listen, Daryl Morey is Daryl Morey. He's I think you and I would agree, one of, if not the best executive in the entire NBA. For Elton Brand to say, you know what? And he admitted it even when he talked to us, that when he first got the job, he was kind of in a little bit over his head. He wasn't really sure what was what. He was kind of learning on the job, which when you're in the position he was in, probably wasn't the best situation. But he swallows his pride. And from what I was told, that he told Josh Harris, please call Daryl Morey, bring him in. Because really, and this benefits Elton, right? Because he's going to learn from Daryl. This is going to only help his reputation, because I think Daryl's going to undo some of the stuff that was done last offseason, which he already has started to do with that Al Horford move. But let's get more into that move. In general, what did you think of, I guess anybody who harbored this illusion that maybe they could get something, whatever, grandiose in a Buddy Hield trade or whatever, that wasn't going to happen. But what did you think of the structure of the deal and what happened in getting Danny Green back, getting Terrence Ferguson back, giving up the first heavily protected first in 2025 and the second rounder? What were your thoughts on the deal overall?
Yeah, I thought when Elton came in that there were maybe two pathways potentially for him. One was to get off of the Al Horford money and untangle some of the cap complications that they have. That was going to be difficult. That he was always, you're exactly right. They were never just going to, send him to Sacramento for Buddy Hield and parts and like make it a sort of even swap. They were always going to have to pay somebody to take Al Horford, and that's the route that they went. The other route would have been decoupling Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. And who knows, by the time people listen to this, maybe all of a sudden James Harden's on the team and Ben Simmons plays in Houston. Anything could happen with Daryl Morey, because if we know anything about him, he's a tinkerer. He's not somebody who likes to play it safe. He's not somebody who like locks himself into one system and who just decides like, these are the personnel that I like, and that's it. I mean, like, yes, he always wanted to ramp up the extreme to the point, like how many the threes they could take, how many times they could get to the line. But like last year, and over the last year and a half or so, when he detonated all his big men, that was a new thing for him. That was a new experiment. So he's always willing to try new things. So I thought he had two avenues here. He definitely so far has taken the one avenue of getting Al Horford off the Bucks, and it was going to be a painful move in terms of you had to give up things just to get him off your books. But I think it's the smart play because now you have some more financial flexibility moving forward. You're not tied into Al Horford's contract, and it opens up different other possibilities on the chessboard for Daryl Morey. And that's going to be the fun thing for Sixers fans who nerded out on the process in the offseason. Now you get another, obviously Sam and Daryl have close ties. You get another crack at this, and at the same time, a crack at it where they could still be contenders simultaneously, as opposed to being awful and then also making moves.
Speaking of Sam and the Daryl Morey connection, I have to ask you a serious question because you know the rest of the Ricky Sanchez guys better than I do. If we weren't in a pandemic right now, if Daryl Morey brings in Nerlens Noel, do they throw him some type of parade?
I think they'll be excited. I don't know if it would be parade level or billboard level. I know for sure.
Billboard, I think, yeah.
I think, we're all of us who lived through Nerlens 1.0 thought that there was like a little left on that there. I like Nerlens. I think that especially if you're going to bring in Nerlens as a backup to Embiid, and he's playing 15 to 20 minutes a game, and he's running the floor, and he's diving at the rim, and he's rebounding, he's doing all the hustle things, and he's not going to be somebody where the ball goes in and it doesn't come out, like big men like a Jahlil Okafor, where the offensive move starts and the rest of the offense stops. That's not him. So I think he'd be a fine fit, and it'd be great to have him back. So I'm prone bringing Nerlens back. That'd be great.
Yeah, I as am I. I mean, bring him on the MLE. He's still really tight with Embiid. They were really good friends when they were both here. Still has favorable relationships with people around the team. Well, the few that are left. Elton Brand was playing here when Nerlens was here, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's crazy.
So there's that. But yeah, it's a solid fit. Plus, he could mentor Paul Reed, who I don't have to tell you anything about Paul Reed because you're all studied up and
Listen, me and Paul, I know it's a podcast, but we're super tight, best buds, pen pals for years.
But Paul Reed is a guy who a lot of people compared favorably to Nerlens, and I could see that as a guy who is very disruptive defensively, long, athletic. Maybe has, I would say, maybe like a little bit more skill offensively coming out, at least than Nerlens did. So maybe Nerlens could come in here, and now he's a little bit older, a little bit wiser, can maybe mentor a Paul Reed a little bit to maybe assume that role behind Embiid for the future. So there's that. Then the other big move as far as trades, Josh Richardson and pick 36 going to Dallas for Seth Curry. And I think it's a similar thing to what we talked about where it's a contract deal, and that's why you're giving up the 36 pick. You look at what Josh can do, where Josh has a player option, can opt out, is probably going to get paid next year, you would think, if he has any type of season in Dallas. Whereas Seth Curry, very affordable, around $8 million for 3 more years. So that's why you're giving up that extra pick. I know some people were worried about that. But again, overall, your thoughts on that trade and where that kind of leaves the Sixers overall.
Yeah, I understand why they did it. I'm higher on Josh Richardson than I think a lot of people in Philly were. It was a tough year for him. He had injuries or fits and starts. They're asking him to do things that maybe he wasn't completely comfortable being the primary ball handler, or on a team that didn't have much shooting, he and Toby being two of your big 3-point threats. That's probably not he's a guy who can do a bunch of different things, but if you're asking him to be a shooting specialist or a ball handling specialist, that's not really his bag. He's a sort of a jack of all trades on the wing, and that's what I love about him. But I understand why they brought in Seth Curry, because if you're looking at this team and what you need, if you're going to keep Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid together, you need shooting. You need to be able to space the floor. And Seth Curry's just going to shoot a monster amount of threes. He's going to help on that. As is, and we didn't even get to this on the Al Horford thing, but bringing in Danny Green. Yes, Danny Green might be towards the end of his career, definitely is towards the end of his career, but I still think he has something left. He's also, in the same way that Al Horford is a consummate professional, he's just a good dude. Danny Green, I've never heard anybody, either teammates or coaches or media members, anybody, executives say a bad word about Danny Green. So you bring him in and he plays however many minutes he can. I still think he's a plus defender. And now you've got some extra shooting around those guys when we all saw in the absence of JJ Redick, who was sort of instant offense for them when they needed it. They didn't have that last year. It was a struggle, and it looked clunky, and the floor looked clogged, and quite clearly, right from the beginning, Morey has a plan here, and we're seeing it laid out. Like, he got to work immediately, and it's pretty obvious what he's doing.
Yeah, when you're talking about fit, I think that's the biggest word that we can use, because Al Horford did not fit. Josh Richardson, to me, did not fit, and I'm with you. I love Josh Richardson in Miami. I thought when they got him for Jimmy Butler, I'm like, all right, maybe I would have liked to see Jimmy Butler here long term. But Josh Richardson, pretty good young player on a really team-friendly contract. Maybe this works, but I just think it's fit. And I think timing, like the culture, where the Sixers were, right, with what we already talked about with the Brett Brown era kind of going in a sour direction with the front office and things kind of souring there. It was just like a bad mix for Josh Richardson to be here, coming from Miami, where the culture is phenomenal. You have Spoelstra running the show, Pat Riley in charge. Like, it was just such a different environment when he gets here. So I think that's part of it too.
And you made a really good point too on the contract part. I mean, Josh Richardson was one of the best contracts in the league, but it's expiring after this season, whereas you're controlling Seth Curry on a hyper-friendly team deal over. Now, who knows if Seth Curry is going to be around for a day or through the next 3 years for the rest of his contract, but it is a valuable asset when you have a shooter who's basically making the mid-level exception amount of money. I mean, that's pretty team friendly.
Yeah, and you pointed to JJ Redick, and I think he replaces some of that now. The biggest, from a shooting perspective, both elite shooters can both do it at a high volume, so that's the very similar player there. Whereas JJ was more off movement guy. Seth has a little something off the and bigger. Both defensively, like nothing to write home about.
Terrible.
Yeah, exactly. But Seth Curry can handle the basketball. He can play a little point guard. He can run a pick and roll a little bit. So from that standpoint, you could make the argument that Seth is maybe even a better fit than JJ was. Now, what JJ was able to do with Joel in that two-man game, the dribble and handoff, that was lethal. I mean, you couldn't stop it for the most part. So there's that. But I just think Seth, with his ability to actually run the offense, like, you could put him, like, right now, of course, this is not their day one's lineup at all. This roster, free agency didn't even start yet. We got plenty of things that could happen between that and now. But you're looking at maybe a starting five of Seth, Danny Green, Tobias, Ben, and Joel. And if that's the case, again, kind of like what, as much as maybe, some people don't love Brett Brown, what he did was right, in the sense that I think at the end, if it's a miss, Ben Simmons pushes it up the floor. If it's a make, you have someone else bring it up the floor. And in this case, it could be Seth. And he could initiate a pick and roll with Ben Simmons. They could do, maybe Danny Green and Joel Embiid can have a little two-man game. So I think there are more options. And again, just the fit is just so much better. And it's what Daryl has already done through these trades to the draft. Like, already this imprint he's made is unbelievable. And again, I don't think he's anywhere near finished, with free agency still happening and some trades that could still come about. Who knows? But I have to ask you something, because I think about last draft night last year, and kind of the sour taste that Sixers fans had, and like all of us in the media were kind of like, well, did you have to kind of do, the Matisse Thybulle deal? It was clear they had promised him. Danny Ainge got wind of it, gets a second round pick out of Elton Brand. That maybe was Carson Edwards, who didn't have a great rookie year, but you never know. They sold off 2 more second round picks, and then they took Marial Shayok, who is now apparently reportedly waived. So out of that trade, out of that draft, you're left with Matisse Thybulle, and that's it. And then you look at this year, where everyone's so amped up. Hey, they got Tyrese Maxey, who was supposed to be a lottery pick. Hey, they got Isaiah Joe, who can really shoot the basketball.
And you know how high I was on Tyrese Maxey.
I know,
top
John.
Of my big board. I can't believe they got the number 1 player in the draft. Amazing.
Incredible.
Look at Daryl Morey, already paying dividends. I think Isaiah Joe was number 2 on my board. What a draft.
Paul Reed was probably number 3. Right?
3 or 4. I mean, let's not get crazy.
Yeah. But in all seriousness, Tyrese Maxey was a guy who, if you looked at, mock drafts, you looked at Kevin O'Connor's mock draft, you looked at Sam
I'm a big fan of him.
Athletic. Yeah, he's pretty good. He's pretty good at what he does.
It's a good site.
No, he did a great job at the draft. And he always knocks it out of the park. He's a phenomenal resource for that. But I actually did an article right before for 97.3 ESPN, where I had 8 guys who I liked in the draft. I didn't put Tyrese Maxey on there, not because I didn't like him, but because I thought there was no shot that he ends up at 21, because I just thought he was that good. And I thought, and you look at the history of the Kentucky guards, the Devin Bookers, Shea Gilgeous Alexander, Tyler Hero, these guys that maybe get a little bit overlooked at Kentucky because of the way Cal implements them. And say what you want about Cal, the guy gets these star recruits and gets them to buy into a team concept. And in a weird way, it almost kind of hurts their draft stock a little bit, because they have to, make it all work to win actual college basketball games. So I think that's another stigma where, these Kentucky guys that keep getting overlooked, I could see Maxey falling right into that category. But to put that all in perspective, like, are the Sixers to you, are they fun again? Is that fair to say?
Let's not get out ahead of ourselves. Let's see what the product looks like on the court. In the same way, like, and we were having some fun with, like my lack of institutional knowledge about college basketball. I only have so much RAM, so I pay a lot of attention to the NBA and very little attention to college basketball. But smart people that I know, and you mentioned Kevin O'Connor, we talked about the Rights to Ricky guys, Mike Levin. Those two guys immediately were like, yes, this is a good pick. Mike told me how excited he was. I'm of the college basketball is much different for a lot of reasons. You outlined some of them. Some of them are institutional. Some of them are college programs that like have their systems, and you have guys who don't get to shine. And then conversely, you have guys who shine in college and they get to the league and they can't play. The lights are too big and it's too fast for them. But hearing from smart people who say Maxey is exactly what the Sixers could use, somebody who can get to the rim, put the ball on the floor. Yeah, I know that you're not as concerned about his shooting numbers and that he could be maybe a league average shooter eventually. That would be amazing, because what they need obviously is scoring, somebody who can get the ball in the bucket one way or the other. And again, like the floor was so clogged last year and they had so many redundant pieces that unclogging some of that and putting in some new guys, some wings who can do some different things. That sounds exciting. So short of, are they fun again? I'll take exciting. I'll take different at the very least. This will be a different team than you saw last year. And that to me is good enough for now. Let's just start at different and see how it goes.
Yes. Well, and that's, again, speaks more to Daryl Morey's presence and the wanting to build around Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons thing when you're drafting guys who fit them. All three of the players that they selected, and Daryl even said that when he talked to us after the draft very late Wednesday night when he was just riffing, baby. He said that these guys, he literally talked about how each of these guys fits next to Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. And that's where I think this organization went wrong last year, is just not factoring that in. Is you have these two young all-stars. Okay, that's great. That's a great starting off point, a better starting off point than what most teams have. So now make it work around them. Don't worry about don't just get like guys who are big name money or even just big talent. Like, get guys that fit. Maxey, I'm going to give you a comp for all three of these guys, and you can tell me if you like it.
Great.
If you like the players. For Maxey, and he even said it himself, a little bit of Drew Holiday. And in the fact that he's a combo guard, I think he could be really good defensively guarding.
I was going to say, how does he defend? Because when you're going to mention Drew Holiday, I mean,
exactly.
Drew Holiday. Now we'll get into my area of expertise. Drew Holiday, for my money, is one of the premier perimeter defenders in the NBA. I mean, like every time I talk to guys back when we could actually talk to guys in person in locker rooms, and you'd say like, who's a guy you hate to see across from you? And of course, like in the NBA, everybody's a tough defend. Like even the bad defenders, you're still in the NBA. But Drew Holiday is extra world. So if he's even like a Drew Holiday starter kit defensively, that would be incredible.
That was probably the best way to put it, a Drew Holiday starter kit, because he's 6'3", but I think he's got a 6'6" wingspan. The effort's there, which is like half the battle, I guess, is a guy actually wanting to play defense and caring about defense, which I believe this guy does. And then Drew, in the sense that I don't know that he's ever going to be an elite shooter, but I think he could be a pretty good one. Can shoot off the bounce, can run an offense, can run the pick and roll, can play on the ball, can play off the ball. So not like an apples to apples comparison for Drew, but favorably. I could see that him kind of having that type of role, being a starting combo guard type player that excels defensively and can give you some offense. I could 100% see him kind of fitting into that kind of role on an NBA team. And then Isaiah Joe, I see, for me, this is
number 2 on my board. Go ahead.
number 2 on your board.
Right.
Furkan Korkmaz with a chance to defend.
I'll take it.
Like he was checking up 9 threes a game at Arkansas. Smooth too. Like you see the shot is like effortless. He's taking them from the parking lot, gets them off with like as quick as can be, and just looks so smooth and effortless. So I see that, and a little undersized. I think he's 166, 170. So
yeah, he's skinny, right?
Yeah, which Furkan was as well when he came over. I mean, Furkan was a skinny dude, and he's put on a little bit of weight. But I think Isaiah Joe actually has a shot to defend. So if he can be a 3-and-D that's maybe more focused on the 3, I would take that in a heartbeat if he can develop into that.
His numbers look. I mean, like I looked at his numbers, and the 3 part seems like it's definitely going to be there. I mean, that guy's shooting threes even when he's not in a game. So that'll be good. I mean, like they need people to jack him up. But yeah, I think like the body type thing is an issue, right? Because we talk about where some guys get to the league and for whatever reason it doesn't work out. I mean, like you've got Zaire. People were really excited about Zaire. Somebody fed him a peanut and his whole career craters. And now like hopefully, he can get back on track. But like things happen where, especially with your body type. I mean, with Zion, it was the opposite thing, right? Like everybody knew that he was going to be a monster, but could he keep his weight under control? With Isaiah Joe and with other guys, when Nerlens came in, he was an absolute real thing. I mean, like people make fun of him eating that halftime hot dog in Dallas. I'm like, do you know how hard it is for they should be feeding him extra halftime hot dogs. So with Isaiah Joe, it's going to be all about like how much weight can he pack on? Is he going to be smart about it? Joel Embiid was another guy. Like he wasn't really smart about his diet early on in his career. He was drinking Shirley Temple's 2 pitchers at a time. Right. Like, so it takes guys, I think, some learning about, okay, this is my job and how much it's not just about how much I invest on the court. It's very much equally about how much I invest off of it in terms of what kind of sleep I'm getting, what kind of food I'm putting into my body, what kind of rest, what weight training, like all that stuff matters. So that all factors into being a good pro.
Yeah. And it was encouraging. Both guys, Maxey and Isaiah Joe, both said that was one of their big things. Maxey said shooting, he said he's taking like 750 to 800. Well, he's making, 750 to 800 shots a day. Plus he's working on his body because he wants to get it ready for an NBA season. Isaiah Joe said the same thing. So it's encouraging that they know, you know what I mean? Hopefully they seem like good young men that will take the coaching and listen to people. So that's good. So we'll see how that goes. And in Paul Reed, I see a little bit of nerves.
Pause for a quick second. You calling them fine young men is amazing to me because like I've known you since you were a fine. Now you're like a fine young adult, but that you've aged out of the young man bracket into like a veteran. I love that.
Well, in my defense, the baby face always fools people. I'm much older than people think I am. I guess I'll just keep it a mystery, I guess, for our podcast.
That's good. It's good.
They can guess. That's what it is. It's damn good genes. And living a carefree lifestyle for most of my 20s. But yeah.
Tell me about Paul Reed.
Paul Reed. I see Nerlens. I think he was 2.5 blocks a game and like almost 2 steals a game. So that's a very Nerlens-y kind of defensive disruption. He's long, can switch, can reasonably kind of switch 1 through 5. And then I even see maybe a little bit of Jeremy Grant too, because he can shoot a little bit. He's got a little bit of offensive game. Like sometimes you watch him and you're like, oh man, a 6'9" guy shouldn't do that. And then you watch him, you're like, oh man, a 6'9" guy shouldn't do that. Like he's a little bit of both. He's a little bit of a wild card there. So the way Daryl Morey told it sounded like he's going to get a roster spot and not a 2-way spot. That doesn't mean he's not going to spend any time in the G League. But yeah, again, you bring in a guy like Nerlens to kind of mentor him and, be the guy that Nerlens kind of didn't have when Nerlens came into the league, that could be a huge benefit. For free agency, what are you expecting? Like, what do you, to prepare Sixers fans, again, anything could happen. Like you said, we could wake up tomorrow or whenever, as soon as I hit publish on this podcast, James Harden could be a Sixer, who the hell knows? But it seems like they're going to have the taxpayer MLE and then I guess minimum guys to kind of round out the roster. Right. So that's what you're looking at. I think Daryl Morey is going to do that just to kind of keep his flexibility moving into the season. Is there anybody in particular you have your eye on, maybe other than Nerlens or any other kind of minimum guys or a guy that you think could fit here?
So we spent a lot of time talking about Nerlens and that's somebody like obviously for like a backup for Joel and just for like nostalgia purposes. I'm a sucker for nostalgia. Bring him back. You had
Go
mentioned
full Eagles.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, I would expect that free agency proper will be semi-quiet for the Sixers because despite getting off of Al Horford's contract long term, they still don't have a ton of room to wiggle with this offseason. So I think it would probably be, as you said, the taxpayer MLE, you slot somebody in, and then like some minimum level guys. It's gonna be those bit pieces that always sort of shake free. Ultimately they're going to need what they've needed for the last couple of years. They can't have enough shooting. They can't have enough guard play. And then let's go from there and see how it goes. But I would expect that it would be relatively quiet in free agency proper. I have more hopes for Daryl Morey working magic in the short and long term than I do for just him going and like saying, okay, yes, I'm going to go and select somebody and add them via free agency. He's going to have to get creative. The good news is, as we know, Daryl Morey is one of the most creative people in the NBA and has been since 2006. And I think like for people who aren't like super tuned into Daryl Morey, yeah, sure, the Rockets didn't win an NBA championship on his watch, but they were consistently one of the most relevant teams in the competitive Western Conference, and they were consistently one of the Western Conference contenders. And to do that over what, like a decade and a half, is an incredible feat. And you had mentioned like one of the best general managers in the NBA. I mean, if you had said to me, you can take anybody in the NBA and make them your general manager, he would be on a short list with like 3 or 4 people. It'd be him and Presti and Danny Ainge and like, I mean, Bob Myers. And like, I'm probably forgetting somebody obvious, but like, these are the guys you'd want to be in charge of your team. So I think Sixers fans have all the reason in the world to be excited right now.
And we talk about Daryl Morey, dude, and like he's just so good at this. Like he's so good at the job. The job of trades, draft, free agency, cap manipulation, evaluation, and all that. He's also outstanding.
Masai. I should have thrown Masai in
Masai,
there.
100% Masai.
Masai's incredible.
Yeah.
Now I'm just thinking about GMs that I've slighted because your podcast is going to be so successful that I expect when you hit post, all the GMs that I didn't mention will get at me and yell at me and say, you didn't say anything on coming in for a landing. And I'll say, I know, I'm sorry. Next time.
Yeah. If that happens, that would be just fantastic. But Daryl Morey too, like with the media, even like the guy is just like having fun and like the way he was talking to us after the draft was almost like a guy like you or I like just getting like our errands done for the day. Like, yeah, it's pretty good. Like I'm excited. It was good. It was a good day. And it's like, dude, you just like kind of altered the roster significantly and like put them on a really good. It's just mind blowing how like I don't want to say easy it is for him, but at least how easy he makes it look and feel, and how good again he is at talking to the media and just this kind of I don't even know like it's almost like a if I'm a Sixers fan, like it's like a comforting thing, like just to hear him talk and the way he just seems under control and the way he has it all together. And this podcast is just 2 dudes gushing about Daryl Morey, which
I mean, that's even if we weren't on a podcast, I'd be doing that. I've long been a fan, and as people know, I will say he's going to be a great fit for Philly in the same way that Doc's going to be a great fit. We like a personality. We like a character. We generally don't like people who shy from the camera or who make excuses or who like vanish behind a curtain. And like I have said and written about this and said this to Sam Hinkie multiple times, people always used to give him heat for not being charismatic or not talking to the media. Only one of those things was true. He didn't frequently talk to the media on the record. He's one of the funniest, smartest people I know. And like, it's just that we only got to see that behind the scenes. You could talk to him for hours and he'd be super thoughtful. He'd be funny, but he just didn't frequently show that to the public. People who didn't have access to him in the same way that you and I did. The difference with Daryl Morey is he'll be the same guy, but you'll see all of it. It'll all be out in front. And Doc too. Doc is, I've had 4 years of him out here in LA since I moved out here. And for the same reasons that I always loved Brett, because Brett was always accessible. Brett would always answer every single one of your questions. Brett would have a fun story for you. Doc's going to be the same thing, maybe even a little supercharged because he's wild with his stories. He's got a zillion of them. And I think those 2 guys together in tandem, for whatever criticisms that people might have of the Sixers moving forward, you're never going to be able to knock them for that.
Right. And you say that about Doc, and I can't agree more. Like whenever they like when the Sixers play the Clippers, you basically for like if you're in the media, you talk to like for the Sixers at least, the Sixers, Brett Brown would talk at 5 o'clock. Then right after that, the away coach would talk right down the hall. And sometimes you go, sometimes you don't. But Doc Rivers was always among my, yes, I am 100% going down
Can't
the end of the
miss.
other hallway. Him and Popovich, basically, it was Popovich when he was here with the Spurs. That was like, it was almost like a stand-up routine. Like it was incredible when he was here. Like just, he talk about riffing, like and that was what the Spurs had just lost like 10 in a row. So he was just like, it was brilliant. But Doc, yes, 100% a guy that whenever I was around, whenever he was around, I had to be there to see what he would say because he will give you great answers. He'll hearken to his career, hearken to his coaching career. Like he'll give you stories for days. Before I let you go, anything on the Ringer that maybe you want to plug or that you're working on, have worked on, whatever that you want to talk about?
I'm working on something now. I can't give too many details about it, but I will plug the last thing that I just wrote. I wrote about it recently. There's a new documentary out about the Eagles called Maybe Next Year by a Philly director, Kyle Thrash, that chronicles the 2017 season, which is just like a remarkable stroke of luck. Like he decided that he's an Eagles fan. He wanted to show Eagles fans and the city and who they are. And he decided he picked the 2017 season. It ended up being obviously the season that they've won their only Super Bowl. But it's not really about that. It's really about like the suffering and the frustration of being an Eagles fan, so that even when they're going through a season where things are going to end up great, it's still hard for people to process. So I highly, highly recommend not just watching the documentary, but check it out on theringer.com. Some familiar characters in there that you'll recognize from Eagles fandom, but also really recommend watching the movie because it's a lot of fun and it shows the city in a way that we understand it. Like when we watch nationally televised games and you see those tracking shots of City Hall, or you see like the cheesesteaks with the onions and the whole bit, it's not that. This is like, right. It's not Boathouse Row across the New Philadelphia jerseys. Shout out to the Sixers executives. Those jerseys are fine, but whatever. The city that I understand tends to be more like a post-apocalyptic Batman set. It's dark and it's gray and it's the refinery and it's gritty. And like, that's the city that I know. And that's the city that you see in the movie, the corner pubs and stuff like that. So highly, highly recommend.
No, it's definitely on my list of things that I definitely need to watch. I'm very eager and anxious to watch it. And then I will read your article as well to accompany
Please
that to finish off the journey there.
Patronize theringer.com.
Yeah. Well, whenever you're not, busy interviewing, people that starred in Parks and Rec or any of my other favorite shows, at least one of us is living my dream. That's all.
You've got a little Nick Offerman going on right now. I kind of like it.
Yeah, a little bit. It's like a mix. Like I've been calling it Big Lebowski meets Blake Shelton. That's kind of the thing I got.
That's perfect. You're nailing it. And even maybe a little Morey with the beard.
Maybe I have been told that maybe he could look like a distant cousin of mine as well. So
there you go.
There's that. If only I had like a tenth of his brain, that would be amazing, and his charisma for that matter. But John, thank you so much, dude. I really appreciate you coming on. It means a lot to me that you took your time out to do this as the first guest on the Coming In for a Landing podcast. Which, by the way, fun fact, I was given blessing by Mark Zumoff to use that name, so very excited about that.
This is the best. You're gonna have to have him on.
Absolutely. And do I tease the guest host for next time? Do I just keep it? Because it seems like it worked out well for this one that no one knew who the hell I was having on. And now it's going to be a big reveal. It's John Gonzalez. I feel like maybe I just ride that out or
maybe. Yeah. Cause I don't know who it is. And now I'm interested to find out who's up next week. But I was honored to be the first guest. Thank you so much. Look, I've seen you grow in this business. You're super talented, and I'm excited to see you continue to rise, man. This is great. I'm going to be a regular listener.
I appreciate you very much, dude. Appreciate it very much. And I appreciate you all for listening to the first edition of the Coming In for a Landing podcast. Please listen, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Please give us good reviews, good ratings, any constructive criticism, but don't be too kind or don't be too cruel. I'm a little sensitive. But again, thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.